Thank you very much. So I'm going to begin just by very quickly getting... They're real, by the way. That's the difference. That's why I look a little different from all of these people. So we're going to begin just by having a very quick introduction to the people on stage, and then we're just going to talk among ourselves for a while. I hope you stay. Please, Chile, tell me who you are and why you're interested in payments.
Yeah.
I know who you are. It's theatre.
Why you're interested in payments? You got me there because I am in payments. Hey guys, good morning. Kenny Ebanyat, Global Head of Payments and Fraud for the NBA Direct-to-Consumer Group. I'm interested in payments because it's what runs the world. Payments runs the world.
So, and can I ask, how long have you been doing it? I mean, I don't associate MBA with... I associate it with like fun and it, but not payments.
Correct.
Yeah, how long have you been on the payment side of things?
Career-wise, 15 years. Oh, wow. With the MBA, 3.5 years.
It's fun and payments.
Yes, it is. I was the first payments hire for the MBA.
Oh, wow.
So we can talk about that later, but yeah.
That is very cool. Please.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Atze Faas. I work for EuroCommerce as payments advisor. I'll speak more about EuroCommerce later on, but it's the Trade Federation for Retail and Wholesale. And prior to that, I was working for BP in payments. And actually, I just mentioned to you, Dave, one of my first jobs in the early 90s was debit card introduction in the Netherlands. So here I am.
So we can remember when payments were boring. None of these younger people can remember that time. Payments has always been exciting to them. Please.
Thanks, David. Morning, everybody. I'm Reid. I work for Mastercard. I run our identity business. This might be blasphemy. I'm not sure I'm as interested in payments as I'm interested in commerce. Nobody goes into a store or a digital shop front to pay for something. They go in to buy something, whether that's a good or a service. What we do brilliantly in this room is enable the economic exchange. And I think remembering our focus is we're remembering what we're about. A merchant wants to sell something, a consumer wants to buy something. Payments is just the way value it gets exchanged. So I hope that's not blasphemy, but that's how we obsess about it.
No, I mean, people often say at conferences, nobody goes into a shop to pay for things to enjoy. But actually, I do. So,
well,
I'm a little different from normal people. Martina, please.
Yeah, hi. I'm Martina Weimart. I'm the CEO of EPI, of the European Payments Initiative. And yeah, I've been in payments for more than 20 years now. And yeah, doing a lot of projects internationally and a lot of payments solutions like SIPs in Portugal, but also PIX in Brazil, or the UAE wallet, or Israel card in Israel. So a very international experience, and very happy to work on EPI because I think we have such a great opportunity in Europe, and yeah, especially in our cooperation with the merchants. So very delighted to be here on that panel. Thank you.
And finally?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. Kilian from Deutsche Bank. I'm running the payments business at Deutsche, issuing side, acceptance side, and all the stuff around that. So I more or less run into payments by accident 20 years ago. So that means the AI looks maybe younger than the reality. And there was no reason to go out of that because it's so much movement for the last 20 years. And happy to join the discussion.
Okay, let me get you guys talking by starting with I wouldn't go so far as to say an elephant in the room, but let's start with one or two of the big issues. One of the things that's been discussed many times at this conference before is, if you like, the arc of card payments, because that's our heritage and that's where most of us started. But I happened to read the report from Bain, it's a consulting company, a few weeks ago, and they're projecting what they call peak card now for 2029 in the US, possibly earlier in Europe. So we've gone from a situation where in one way we had a kind of stable environment, and now the sort of disruption that's coming is within the strategic planning horizon of most of the people and organizations in this room. So I just want to begin by just getting your feelings for this sort of thing. Is that an overly dramatic view, or are we in one of those periods where we're going to discontinuous change rather than the sort of steady evolution we've had before, please?
So I made the analogy with peak oil. Working for an oil company, there were always discussions: when will be the peak in oil demand or oil production? And I read back in the early 50s, last century, already there was a prediction that peak oil would be reached in 1970. And then it moved on to 2000. Of course, with COVID, everything changed. But peak oil has still not been reached. So my contention would be, peak cars, I think it's a bit further down the road, because there's, many additional use cases for cards that have come along. When I talk to the airlines and the hotels, the way the online travel agents settle with those merchants, the increased use of virtual credit cards there's many use cases where I think cards is by no means dead or by no means on the decline. I know it sounds funny to hear from a merchant, but I don't think we'll see peak card in 29.
I think the payments history is littered with predictions that didn't turn out accurately. I mean, I joined Mastercard 16 years ago, and I think we were predicting that everybody would be tapping and paying within a matter of years, and they clearly weren't. And so, and there's an element of what drove that, which is consumer adoption, consumer acceptance, consumer trust in this form factor or device. And so peak card will happen if there's a substitute, if the secular shift to electronic payments and something better comes along for all the participants in the ecosystem, which are the funding source, the consumers and the merchants, and actually all of us in this room who have a role to play in ensuring that it's trusted. So I tend not to make those predictions. I find 2029 a lot closer than you think. We know in this room how long it takes and how much we will amortize different investments that we make. And so while that may be an opportunity, it's just going to take, I think, a much longer period of time for the entire ecosystem to be able to and want to drive to a new type of acceptance of electronic payments.
I think one thing that's a little different, though, is when we were talking about this in the past, we were talking about it in a more, kind of abstract way. But now we can see at least two alternatives. I guess you could say one short term and one longer term. So you can see that direct account-to-account payments are starting to take a share. And to be fair, both Visa and Mastercard have made investments in that area. It's not like I'm the only one that's spotted this, or Martina and I. And then perhaps a bit further downstream, we've also got the issue of the digital euro and central bank digital currency coming as well, not in the US. So, because obviously when Robert Kennedy's president, he's going to put the brakes on that for a while. So it's
no comment.
It's going to take a little while to see.
Yeah, we could be here a long time.
But the point is that is different. The fact that people are actually beginning to make investments in these alternatives, right? You've already started spending money on digital euro, haven't you?
Yeah, definitely. So we had to spend money in a lot of things. Digital euros is one of them, and that's a little bit the challenge now from a bank perspective, that we have tons of new initiatives on the table, and we need to figure out which one of them is worth to invest. So obviously EPI from Martina is one of them. With digital euro, we have no choice. Also there, we need to deal with that. But there are 2-3 other things. We have already invested into open banking, open finance capabilities. We're now waiting for that these investments will pay off, hopefully. Same on the instant payment side, and not to forget about SBAA and all the other things. So it's hard to figure out, and the challenge from a bank point of view is get lost in that area, which is on the other side an opportunity for the card side, because they say, oh guys, you can invest money wherever you want. We are taking the market, and that is maybe a challenge we are facing as an industry, not as a bank, but as an industry, to really power one part of the story and not the other one.
Yeah, I would add that from the merchant perspective, it's the same. Where do you put your money? Where do you put your resources? Which will come first?
Yeah. And it's not a choice you can change then overnight. Yeah? If you decide to go that direction, you need some time to follow up that direction because otherwise the money is anyhow lost.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the timescale point is well made. I mean, because now we are sounding old, but we worked on the very first contactless pilot anywhere in the world, which was Mastercard down in Tampa, Florida. And it's taken 20 odd years to get from like fiddling about with a pilot to a situation where, certainly in the UK, to all intents and purposes, all transactions are contactless. I mean, it's 93, 94% or something, I think, at retail point of sale. But there's some other issues there as well. You know, you mentioned open banking in passing. That's another area where, and I'll give you an example. I was in Las Vegas last week for FinTech Meetup, and it's got nothing to do with the talk. I was in Las Vegas last week.
You need to get that in.
No, I get around, that's the point I'm making there. But you couldn't get arrested talking about open banking a couple of years ago in the US, and now because of Dodd-Frank, 1033, you've got big players looking at open banking, and that obviously adds products into the market here as well. So those things are real changes, right? They are. And not business as usual. So in the US, the merchants were complaining about, they're complaining about the costs as always. They were complaining about, in particular, the massive rise in first-party fraud, which seemed to be a particular problem for the people out there. What are your top concerns from? I mean, I'm just curious. What do you actually sell?
We at the NBA have a product called NBA League Pass. Anybody know about NBA League Pass? All right. Any basketball fans here? All right. Anybody a subscriber? Oh, I love all three of you. No, today, the NBA, as we know it today, is an entity that obviously provides game content and distributes game content globally. We provide rights. And as of today, the NBA is a merchant. We do sell monthly and seasonal subscriptions globally. And so from a global perspective, we're a normal merchant like anybody else here is. We have the same concerns, whether it's fraud, whether it's interchange problems. And one of the things we're trying to accomplish is two things. We want to grow the game globally, and we want to deepen our connection with our fans. So there's been a lot of initiatives in growing the game globally. You've seen a lot of global games, the Abu Dhabi, the Paris game, which was a few months ago. And that's been going great. It's no secret that, this year we had the greatest number of international players at the NBA. It was 27% of players in the NBA today are international. And so that's no surprise.
And that commerce right now is all driven by cards.
It is driven by cards, yes. Yeah. Yes. Mostly 80% cards.
What's the other 20%?
Wallets.
Well, that gives us another topic to talk about.
Yep.
Because
wallets.
I was going to loop around to that a bit later on, but we can sort of talk about that now.
Yep.
So if you look at the statistics, you get these reports every year from WorldPay and Capgemini. We've all seen the same statistics. Yep. By far, the biggest growth is wallets.
Yes.
And that sort of leads me to ask another question about brand. And so when you kind of move to a wallet environment, right now, you're just choosing between different cards or so on.
Yep.
But we're not far away from this era of the sort of smart wallet that people are talking about, where actually, will you really be in the loop? So in other words, you go to pay for something, your smart wallet asks you, is it okay to pay the NBA, 50 euros, whatever it is. After that, why would you be involved? Would you actually know or care how your digital wallet pays the merchant? Do you care whether the merchant...
I think we've been there for a while, though, don't you think? With card with credential on file, like the convenience of telling a trusted relationship you have with a merchant, here's how I want to pay in the future, and can you keep it on file for me? Which is, by the way, like what used to happen in a almost in the analog world of a credit sheet that I'd come and settle with you at the end of the week or the end of the month. Now I'm sounding old. And then now it can be tokenized, and so it's much more secure, and it can be very individual. The amount of experiences we have with or without a wallet where it's one click or it's a checkout, great, yeah, that's the card I always pay. So I think you're right, David. I think people want convenience in their life. We are creatures of habit, and we do pot and pull the way we spend, the way that we save, and we have preferred cards for different purposes. So I think wallets will enable it, but I actually think it's been happening for years in the context of I'm going to keep that card, and that's how I'm going to pay for my shopping.
Let me ask you the question in a slightly more pushy way then.
Sure.
Okay. So now we're thinking about that sort of 2029 kind of horizon. So I go to a store, I walk out of the store, my phone says, you owe 27 euros 50 cents. I hit my thumb or my face or whatever. I can think of at least three, in the 2029 timeframe, I can think of at least three completely different ways that transaction could work. So it could run over the 85, 83 rails we have now, debit pull over the rails. It could be a credit push over 222, SC Inst, which actually many merchants would prefer because it'll be more data rich in that kind of environment. Or of course it could be through CBDC, some form of digital euro in that time. So my question to you is, why would consumers know or care which of those routes was being adopted? In other words, maybe consumers are going to move further away from this. Historically, we've tried to influence consumers about our payment choices, but maybe in that kind of time frame, that's going to start drifting away from us a little.
I think the consumers want to have the control, at least that's what's coming out of all research. The consumers are even looking for more control than what they have today. So I think there's definitely a big advantage of being directly linked to an account. So to have, as a consumer, whenever I transact, the visibility on what is my account position at that very moment. And I think you are hinting at three ways of paying, but I don't think that will be the big driver. I think the big driver is going to be how much service or what else can I do with this? Because the pure blunt payment is not the issue anymore. Yeah, you can do it in many convenient ways. We all know it just has to be smooth, secure, a trustful provider working everywhere. But then the big fight now, and that's the game of the wallet, is how many services can I provide with that payment? Is my loyalty card integrated of that merchant in an earn and burn way? Do I get my instant financing on just my buy now, pay later on a fingertip? And do I feel comfortable with all this? So I think it's a question of who gets the right service package for the consumer and for the merchant.
Which I think is driven by, I think that's where Deutsche Bank comes in.
But I see it's in some areas a little bit different. I think number one, I think the consumer did not care about the rail. The rail doesn't matter at all. So this room cares about the rail, but the consumer should not even know that there is a rail. So number one. Number two, I think level first driver, that comes to what Chris is saying. I think the consumer is lazy. That means convenience is key. That is basic. Before we coming to value-added things and features and things like that, consumer is lazy. That means convenience is key. And I think the growth of the wallets are driven not because they are wallets. It's because they are able to make it more convenient. So also the user did not care about wallets. He or she cares about convenience. And second thing, and sometimes it's not the same user groups, they care about control. And to combine convenience and control, I think that is the key. And then on top of that, features can play a role. And then we are with on the package side.
And I'll add to that, convenience, being lazy, but also how secure they feel making that payment. Because I think that's one key in customer transactions is you want to make sure they feel secure in how their money is getting moved around and how their accounts are protected.
And I think that's important. Feel secure. They don't care if they are secure. They need to feel secure, and that's the key.
But I think we can do a better job in explaining to consumers and to merchants, what the different tools in the toolbox are. I usually say, for some use cases, digital euro might be the right one, and for others, a buy now, pay later solution may be the right one. If you buy a new washing machine, you probably don't want to use digital euro. So, we need to make sure that everybody understands, don't use a screwdriver if you want to hammer a nail into the wall. There's the right tool for everything, and it may not be for you, or it may not be for that use case.
If we do transition to a kind of more wallet-centric environment, it's very clear from what you guys are saying that actually, because it's those value-added services that are the heart of the wallet, I mean, the payments are a sort of table stake. You have to have the payments for people to use the wallet, but actually the payments won't be the valued part of the wallet. That's not what consumers will be. It will be those value-added services like my season tickets and all this kind of thing. So without pandering to Chris too much, if you look in, I mean, I haven't got it with me, obviously, because I never do, but if you were to take my wallet out of the drawer at home and look inside it, almost everything that's in my wallet isn't anything to do with payments. It is my sports season ticket, my driver's license, some loyalty cards and this kind of thing. Like virtually nothing has got. So if that's right, if that kind of thinking is correct, who is it that's going to provide those wallets? Because if payments aren't the important part, if those value-added services are the important part, who are you looking to provide that? And don't just say Apple and Google. We need kind of more invention beyond that. So who else could provide that? Could the NBA provide a wallet that? I mean, your fans are very dedicated.
Potentially. I mean, nothing's off the table. One thing we're trying to do is deepen our connection with our fans, right? So, in 2020, we launched a whole new, brand new app, a whole new web experience, TikTok style scrolling. But at the end of that was, we inserted what we call NBA ID. NBA ID is a free account that lets you sign up with an email, but it based on the players, based on the teams that you're following, it provides personalized information to you. There's partner discounts. So it's all about deepening the connection with your customers, because if you do that, then payments is kind of secondary, right? You can use that to pay for NBA League Pass, but at the end of the day, you said season tickets, right? There is merchandise that our subscribers are buying. There is, NBA 2K, the fantasy games. So by deepening that relationship, I think you have a two-pronged way you can stay connected with that customer. It's the NBA ID and all the offers, but it's also the payment side. So that's something that we are working on to make sure that in the future, those different verticals are connected by both NBA ID and whatever payment method you choose to use.
It's true. I mean, I hate to say it, but people don't feel the same way about their banks as they do about their sports teams. You could see there are other loci of brand loyalty that could be more effective as a wallet than the bank. The bank just becomes part of it, especially with open banking.
Yeah. And the bank will never be the same level of emotional connection like a brand like NBA and other things like that. I think that is not a level playing field we should compete with. But there's also use cases which are not emotional where payments play a role. So I'm unfortunately not buying every day on NBA.com. So I'm buying every day on a retailer where I don't care about the brand itself. So I think in that context also, the value-added services are limited. So in that case, it's about payments and it's about frictionless things. And I think these are two different areas. Not the sexy ones, but I think the day-to-day relevance.
Functional.
The brand thing fascinates me, but anyway, let's move on and talk about some of the technological. So again, in that sort of horizon, what technological changes are we going to? So you're talking about issues like security, first-party fraud. In those kind of areas, we do see technological change. We do have, partly coming from the sort of cyber currency world and so on, we do see new technologies coming into the marketplace we didn't have before. Not just network tokenization, but digital asset tokens, central bank digital currency and these kind of things. We see lots going on in the authentication space with, FIDO and all these kind of things going on before. We finally, I think, are beginning to see changes in the identity space. We've got the European Digital ID wallet coming, other things like that. We're seeing changes in the underlying technology, which also are potentially disruptive. Which technologies do you have your eye on at the moment in that kind of strategic horizon?
Everything tokenized.
Everything.
Everything tokenized, of course, because, well, that's the general trend, I would say. I think what is very interesting also, even though it's maybe not the main technology, but very interesting, are all the developments around QR codes. Remember a couple of years ago, at least in Europe, people didn't know how to use it. It was not always very easy to use them. Now it is, and people know how to use it. And yeah, and I think that is very interesting. But yeah, we need to get to a different level, I would say, also in terms of fraud prevention now, where I see massive challenges still to be solved. And yeah, it remains a big issue. So I think there, yeah, hopefully AI, but also other things need to come up to bring at least account to the full potential.
And from our point of view, I think an interesting point is also which part of all the new technologies we can skip. Because finally, after some years, now everybody understood what, for example, blockchain is. And now everybody said, okay, blockchain is gone, let's take the next one. But the industry is still lagging behind and has a large backlog on implementing all the new technologies. And I think the more important decision is which one should we take the bet on and which one should we ignore?
I'm running the risk of being contrarian in this panel, and I don't mean to be. I think there's a risk in focusing on the next technology and the next technology and the next technology. And what we're missing is adoption and optimization of existing technology, David. I sometimes say technology is great, but if it isn't utilized, if it isn't optimized, it's a one-handed clap. It can enable a bunch of things, and so the connectivity. But actually, if that tokenization doesn't lead to more trust in a transaction, it doesn't lead to a successful approval for a safe transaction and a successful decline for an attempted fraudulent transaction, tokenization doesn't actually deliver anything. Smart technology that wasn't utilized. And so I would agree, blockchain, what does that enable us to do? It enables a lot of things. But if it doesn't then come to life, if we're not, all of us in this room, being quicker, being more reliable, moving more data, looking at that data, making better decisions in nanoseconds, then actually today's technology isn't going to achieve its potential. And I think there's an exercise in ensuring that what we have today is fulfilling its potential, as well as preparing ourselves for the future. So hopefully there's a balance there, and I'm not just contrary.
There's also, we can't escape the fact that we live inside a regulatory envelope as well. And so, we're different from other industries in the sense that, we're constrained by what we can do. And actually also the sort of regulatory frameworks we have, might not really be suited to some of those new technologies. Martina said in passing about AI, I'm sure EPI, in common with every other organization, has already determined that over that sort of 3 to 5 year horizon, AI will be by far the dominant technological change in that space. And it's not obvious to me, I have to say, how that's going to interact with our sort of comfortable world of SCA and PSD3 and all this kind of thing. So I don't think any of us really can probably... You know what I mean? Like the big disruption that's coming is AI. And I don't know how that's going to fit quite with the world that we live in.
Well, is it going to be a disruption on the positive side or the negative side? So I can see where AI would help consumers to become customers, and help them through the buying process with augmented or virtual reality and, interacting like if you're talking with a human person. But the flip side would be on the fraud side, and where AI can be very powerful in tricking people, consumers into all kinds of, fraud, or even to the extent where AI can break cryptography. I don't know how powerful AI will be, but encryption will need to stay one step ahead of it. So I see AI as a blessing in disguise, maybe. I don't know. I'm not comfortable yet.
Well, I don't want to second guess what people are going to be saying in the AI session. I'm just saying, like, from a high level perspective, whatever we think about evolution in authentication space or something like that, it will be nothing compared to the disruption that will come from the AI space. So I certainly imagine in next year's conference, and we'll probably lead off with AI because that will be where all the changes come from, But actually, when you connect that with the digital wallets, that does sort of take us into a slightly different world.
It does. I mean, we're using it today for the personalization aspect of it, right? You follow X team and you follow X player. Some of that is built into the AI to be able to recognize what else you might be able to like along the way. It's machine learning, it's AI. So there is some use cases that are non-regenerative that make people feel unsafe. So there is some use cases there that potentially we could benefit from.
I think so.
I think the show of hands would be whose company isn't using AI today and hasn't been using it for quite a while. Whether it's in personalization of an offer, of a digital storefront, whether it's accelerating the pathway to onboard a new customer, whether it's inventory management aligned to a point of sale ecosystem, or whether it's approving a transaction. I think you're right. There's advantages, there's disadvantages. There always has been. There's been genuine humans and there's been criminals. We just have a different tool set.
Yeah, but is it opening a door that we perhaps can't close anymore? That's the big question.
So I can't resist quoting it. So it's a very famous quote from John Cryan when he was Deutsche Bank. It's a few years ago. He very famously said that right now the bank employs people to behave like robots, but in the future will employ robots to behave like people. So he was very far-sighted.
The question is, where are we right now? More robots or more people?
Okay, so let's finish up our little discussion by just give the audience a little window into what it is you're particularly looking for this week. What are the subject areas? What are the sessions you personally, not your organisations? What are the areas that you're personally looking forward to learning a little bit more about? Let's start at the far end this time.
So I look personally really connecting to merchants, really taking the merchant view on the payment space, because on our day-to-day business, there's a lot of interaction with the community and the payment space itself. But sometimes there's the risk to forget about the most important players in the ecosystems, and the merchants are, next to the consumers, the most important players. And this is what I'm looking for, really getting feedback from the merchant side, understanding, are there new things on the table, what is driving them, what are the wishes, what are the threats, what are the risks there. So that's my view.
Martina?
Yeah, definitely. I would agree because, I can only say, for example, for us as a new solution, it's a huge challenge to find out what are the real priorities, meaning, okay, there's already so much out there. There are different needs per vertical in the merchant world, but really driving this down to come to roadmaps which are overarchingly meaningful for merchants is a massive challenge because, we want to work with the merchants, and I can only say that the feedback we get is very diverse. So is it just, because that's fancy, or is there a real need? How big is that real need? The diversification and all these developing trends at the same time is a huge challenge, and therefore the feedback of merchants is super important. Yeah.
Chris?
It's very similar, David. We see a lot of data. We will generate some hypotheses. The ability to talk direct and say, hey, why is that happening in your environment? Is that by design, or is that something you're frustrated about? Is that within your band of tolerance? So I have quite a few sessions over the next couple of days to dig into that. So it's a really good source of insight for me.
Right, so representing merchants, the first word of the conference here, I look forward to networking with other merchants. I hope there are few other merchants there. And otherwise, I think the program is very varied, and I look forward to, enjoying that.
Yep. This is your first time at the conference.
This is my first time.
So what are you looking forward to this week?
Selfishly, networking, as he said, but I think my background has been very heavily U.S. payments, and this is an opportunity to really talk to the other side of the pond, get to learn the intricacies of European payments. And I think that's something that I'm excited to add to my tool set.
I think, US payments are in pretty good shape, actually, because when I was in Las Vegas did I mention I was in Las Vegas last week?
You did.
When I was in Las Vegas last week, not only did I have to insert enter the PIN, I still had to sign the transaction as well. So
That's crazy. Drives me. I want to tell them that does nothing, but anyway.
And you could have taken your checkbook and actually paid for it by check.
it's tradition. Look, the point I want to make, so it's a very diverse thing, but the agenda of this week is there is so much stuff in it. There's so much change. There's so much new that's going on. It is actually genuinely surprising when you look at the people you're going to meet, the discussions you're going to have, the things you're going to learn. Yeah. So once again, I take my hat off to Philip for delivering this. Well, look, everybody, you had a panel of professionals who know everything about this business. They didn't know the questions I was going to ask them. They gave you their honest opinions from a well-informed perspective. I hope you appreciated that as much as I did. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Now, please.